for the past week, wildfires have ravaged Southern California, causing nearly 200,000 citizens to evacuate, and the latest death toll is at 24. A new report shed light on what may have caused the devastating Palisades fires, an earlier fire set off by New Year's Eve fireworks. Here to discuss is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and Blaze Media national correspondent Julio Rosas. So, Julio, you've been on the ground out there in California documenting these fires. So what have you seen?
Well, besides the smoke and the fire, which is, like the main thing, right? The thing that when I was in Mandeville Canyon over the weekend, the thing that really struck me the most was actually seeing firsthand how much dead leaves, branches, and underbrush was still covering the hillside that had yet to be burned, right? And that's kind of one of the reasons why these wildfires have been so devastating, is because of the state's mismanagement of forest management. And so being able to actually see that, and then seeing the fire slowly make its way down, going through all that dead plant life, and just adding fuel to this already big fire, it's a stark reminder as to how, not to say that this was entirely avoidable, depending on how these fires actually got started. But a lot of it could have been mitigated if there was competent leadership to take forest management seriously, and that's just one component, right? And then there's the other water management and personnel management. And so this kind of really showed how leadership within the state and at the local level really has mismanaged and kind of put the important things aside for progressive policies.
Julio, how about the citizenry there? Have you been able to talk to some of the people who have lost so much? I mean, obviously it's devastating, but what's the attitude? What are the kind of things you're hearing?
Well, so when I was in Altadena, which is part of the Eaton fire, just north of Pasadena, I did run into this couple, and they weren't willing to speak on camera for obvious reasons. They were very distraught, but they did tell me how quickly everything had moved, because the man walked out of his house. It was at 7:30 a.m. This was last Wednesday, and he saw the flames coming from a canyon that he actually normally would go hike and bike in, and so he realized how close it was, and so they got out within the hour. And then by the time I had arrived in the afternoon, I mean, his entire block was just completely gone. And so their 1980s convertible, I forgot the exact model, but that had been left behind, and it was completely gone. And he just started breaking up and tearing up, because he just said, my wife really loved this car, and now it's gone. So there's obviously a lot of sadness, a lot of there's just shock of how quickly things got out of control. But then there's also a little bit of that anger, right? That I ran into actor Dennis Quaid, and I asked him if he is also frustrated with the incompetence. He said, "Oh, hell yeah." He said that there's too much of politicians pointing the fingers at each other, and right now we need people to just get the job done and getting this under control.
Yeah, let's go ahead and listen to some of that from Dennis Quaid.
Mr. Quaid, just really quick, do you share the same concerns and frustrations with how the local and state government were prepared for this?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Bunch of politicians pointing fingers at each other. And that's what, I don't want to hear that stuff on the news. I want people out doing stuff about it. That's what.
I appreciate that from him, because it doesn't matter at this point if you're a celebrity, if you're a regular person, if your home is in danger or has already burned down, Julio, you're going to be righteously angry about this in this scenario.
Yeah, and more than that, I mean, even when I was there, the incompetence was really still on full display, because we got 3 warnings countywide telling people to evacuate when it was supposed to only go to Woodland Hills. This is when the Kenneth fire had just started, which is north of downtown Los Angeles. And so there's just a lot of anger at the continued level of incompetence of people who are supposed to be in charge of these hectic scenarios, right? They're supposed to take charge and lead, and they're continually to fumble the ball in big and small ways. And so it will be interesting to see that once all of this is finally over, it'll be interesting to see if anyone will be held accountable. There's a lot of people who are not optimistic about that fact, just because of how entrenched the political machine in Los Angeles is, and then to see how what will actually change at the federal level, since we do have the Trump administration starting next week. And actually, I spoke to one man in Encino when the Palisades fire was getting aggressive again, and I did ask him, "Would you feel better with Trump being in office right now, or are you looking forward to Trump being in office in a couple of days?" And he said, "Yes, like that would make me feel 100% better, because our local politicians are terrible."
Well, the man at the top right now in California is Gavin Newsom, and he was asked by CNN about the lack of water, and here's what he had to say.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system.
So many people have made a big deal. When he goes out there, Newsom he literally throws his hands up in the air and he goes, "Oh, they'll figure it out," right? How much responsibility and control do you think that Gavin Newsom has over this right now?
Well, definitely with the forest management side of things, because it's not obviously just a Los Angeles issue. This is a statewide issue, because California does have beautiful nature, right? That's one of its still very few appealing aspects of the state. And so you have that. You have the one thing that I think was really pertinent was, like, for example, here in Florida, right? Whenever there's a hurricane, the National Guard is put on standby. The National Guard started being mobilized so that they're ready for when the requests come for assistance, that they're able to go right into action. Gavin Newsom didn't call the National Guard until the next day after the fires had started, so they weren't pre-positioned. And the reason why that's so important, as someone who was in a reserve capacity in the military, it takes time. It takes time to get the personnel in place, because it is a part-time thing. And so they have their regular lives that they're at. They may be busy being affected by the fire or getting their loved ones out of the way. And then if they get the order that they have to come back in to prepare for this, and then you have the mission, you have the mission briefings, you have all the things that get them ready to actually go out, and then it takes the time to actually go out and get in place. And so I didn't see the National Guard really out in force until the last day before I left. And so when hours and minutes count, you got to have every single resource and asset that you have available. You have to have that prepositioned prior to something like this happening, because at that point, you're not being proactive, you're being reactive. And so I think that's another thing that hasn't been highlighted with Gavin Newsom's, again, just lack of urgency because everyone knew, everyone in the state knew that these winds were going to be coming for, almost a week in advance. And so, it's just shocking to continually see California politics and California policy just not doing what needs to be done, whether it's small things or whether it's a natural disaster like this.
Julio, before we let you go, Karen Bass is definitely the next on that list. She's the Los Angeles mayor, and she had some advice for the locals. Take a look.
Right now, if you need help, emergency information, resources, and shelter is available. All of this can be found at URL. Los Angeles, together is how we will get through this.
I can't believe it. This is what we're going out doing. It's like Western North Carolina all over again, when FEMA was out there again. Oh, you can just go ahead and they can figure out on their cell phones and just turn their TVs on in their houses. Well, their houses have burned down. They can't just put this up. It's not that easy for them. But how have California residents been left with absolutely no leadership at this point?
Well, I see because I mean the voters put them there. That is something that needs to be reckoned with, and that's why it's important to see what will happen after everything is all said and done, because then the recovery process is going to take a long time, especially in a state like California, and especially in areas where this has been hardest hit, right? So it's unfortunate, right? Because I mean, I prior to moving to Florida, I did spend a lot of time in California. It was very, very tough to see these areas that I'm familiar with just be completely thrown into chaos, thrown into this fear, and it was inescapable. I mean, even before I left the airport, the smoke and the air quality was so bad. Even though I wasn't right at the front lines, I started getting a headache, and that headache didn't go away completely until I had to leave the area. And so even if people who aren't being told to evacuate or having to leave, they are still going to be negatively impacted by this for a long time. And so, the hope is that this was a painful, unfortunately, this was a painful learning experience. And so hopefully the electorate, the next time that there's elections at the state and local level, that they're going to prioritize people that are actually competent, and instead of checking off certain boxes.
Well, Julio Rosas, we really appreciate the update. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
And Matthew, you've been talking with people. This is your old home. This is like the fire line is right up to where you used to live.
Yeah, I was tempted to give Julio my old address just to see if our house was still there. I think it is, but it's right on the line near the Altadena fire. Eaton Canyon is where we used to hike with my kids. So 8 or 9 families we know from the school there that we went to, they all lost everything. They lost their house. Many cases, it's really a brutal situation for them. So it really breaks the heart. And I think the thing about it is just how needless it is. Like he said, you could have mitigated this at least, if not prevented it. And it's everything's on fire, and Venezuelan gangs are trying to sift through the ashes of these people's homes to loot. And you have to wonder at what point will this end? Because I don't think this will be the first infrastructure disaster in California. No,
but we did see that big 18-wheeler outside in the Mercury One parking lot today. So if you want to go ahead and help them, you can go to mercury1.org.